Being present with anyone. It doesn't matter how old, how young, how poor, how intelligent, how not intelligent, but exposure to people, loving them with the love of Christ can change their lives.
Put us together. We are your children. Put us together. City of Kit, mein Shabase,
My parents were very strict with us, even against English. We were not allowed to read English newspapers. We were not allowed to listen to an English radio station. You would get a big spanking if they find you doing any of those, because my parents and their parents hated English or the British because of what happened to the Afrikaner. So that hatred have gone into racism. And I think that's where the fear, and I believe that's where apartheid was born. It was born out of a fear that the black people would, because of their numbers, would rule us and say, no, how are we going to secure ourselves?
Do what you like, I will too. Do what you like, I will.
My father was a road worker. They built completely new roads. So I've been brought up in tents. We're talking about the 50s and early 60s. My first experience and exposure to black people was around about the age of, I would say, 9, 10 years of age. My father bought a piece of land, and so the black worker that have worked for us, his children, we connected to them in secret, because we were not allowed to play with them because we white and they black. But I had a little friend, and there was a mystery around it for me, and I was just drawn to this little boy. And we would, when mom and dad is at work, they're not at home, me and him would be building something or build a trench for an underground house or something like that. So it was still a couple of years before the transition that the country made. We joined an English church. It was fatal for us in our family and all that. They rejected us completely. But that was where life and new things and the truth were there for us. And I think the Lord, through the Holy Spirit, have birthed a new view, a new understanding, and then also a love for something that we were separated from. And that is a love for all people. It doesn't matter, color or race. There came a time where we realized that our kids, the exposure our kids get in the government schools were not good. They wanted to take out religion out of schools, or Christianity out of schools. There was a lot of bad exposure, and we decided that we want to start a church school. Now, being an English church, open for the new things of Christ and all that, we started a Christian school, open to all races, a very first in the northern part of South Africa, and in 1989. And we started that school in our home. One evening, one little boy, he was probably 7 years old, 6, 7 years old, was left at school, that is our home now. And so 5, 6 o'clock in the evening, this little boy was still waiting for his parents or his grandmom to pick him up. And Rensha said, you better need to go and bring him into the house. And she said later on, you need to go and bath this little boy. We had an old farmhouse with old taps, really old taps. And while I'm bathing this little boy, I thought, well, I must start a conversation with him. And I say, how do your bath look at home? And he said, no, he stayed with his grandma. Now, she was a nurse and and earned a lot of money and stayed in a brand new, modernized Western house. And he said, no, every evening I do bath in a bath like this, but our taps are not as old as yours. Then I realized, it's our perception of things is not always right. A couple of years later, I became the school principal of that school because we built the school on our farm then. And the first conflict, white-black conflict, happened between a little white boy and a black boy. So the next day I called the parents. So now here's my first experience for now what to choose. Being dependent on the Lord all the time, I pray in the morning and I say, Lord, you need to help me. You need to show me what's happening here. And the Lord actually told me something that was so significant. He said, Pierre, don't look at the outward color. Look at the hearts. Because I'm sure if God hadn't warned me, I would have definitely be pro-white. Because that's where I come from. And I could just see the two people as two people in front of me with different attitudes in their hearts. And the problem actually lied with the white guy with the heart that's not changed. And the black guy had a changed heart, washed white with the blood of Christ. I've also discovered that knowledge in itself is not very effective. Later in life, God showed me with people, I call it the ministry of presence. The ministry of presence is actually the biggest thing. To be present with someone can help the relationship to grow, can give exposure to new ideas, can educate, can guide. We always say God have made us to be teachers and learners. Is we've learned to love unconditionally. We've realized in our lives that we always love people for a reason. It doesn't matter if you're going to change or not going to change. I love you because Christ loved me, I can love you. That was a big thing. And then we learn to serve. We've never learned to serve because we always had black workers. And that's why we've only learned to serve conditionally. The last thing is a funny one, and it is actually fun. The last one is for us as Christians to have fun. And I even call it sometimes, I never knew that there's something like serious fun. To have serious fun is we've learned that religious people are always serious. And it robs us from a big part of life. We must laugh, we must have fun, we must enjoy each other.
Shoni langa ngekwe kaya. La shoni langa ngekwe kaya.